Hi everyone, this is Aaron from SOLA Network. I am here with Pastor Steve S. Chang. Pastor Steve, I'm introducing you as Pastor Steve S. Chang because that's what we have here. This is our book, A Letter to the Asian American Church. This is a proof copy, so it's not yet finalized, but this is what it's going to be. Pastor Steve, before we start talking about this though, can you introduce yourself? Tell me about your ministry, and tell me how we got to this part where we're writing a book all of a sudden.
I know. It's amazing, isn't it? I'm right now the senior pastor of Living Hope Community Church, which is in Brea, California. I've been here 30 years, and most likely this will be my last year as I'm transitioning out so that I can do some other work. And I'm also on leadership of SOLA Network, and we exist to influence the emerging generation, especially of Asian Americans, with the gospel of Jesus Christ. SOLA Network's been around for a little over 10 years, and Aaron, you've been here for a large part of that time. How do we get to this book? I've been thinking about having a collaborative book, especially with our council members and a few others, because a lot of them have great thoughts and have processed a lot of information, contextualizing ministry for the Asian Americans, whether it be the independent church or within the immigrant church. But oftentimes, those thoughts just remain with them. And Asian Americans are a little bit more hesitant about putting them in writing. They feel like they need to perfect it, or they don't really have anything to contribute, etc. So I've always been kind of thinking about that. But it's actually you, when you brought up the idea of why don't we do something in writing in conjunction with the conference that is coming up, right? The writing the next chapter of the Asian American ministry or something like that. And I thought, wow, this would be the perfect timing to work on this book. And there's a natural deadline that we have to meet, and we all work better with deadlines. And so got that project started about a year ago, I think, something like that.
I do remember that conversation. SOLA, we've been publishing for a while, right? But I want to go kind of even further back from that conversation. When were you? It's because you were open to that idea of a book when I mentioned it. So I want to go, what made, like, it sounded like things were already turning in your head even before I mentioned that.
Yes.
That's what I want to hear. I want to hear that.
I think it's when I've had conversations or when we've published articles. I remember having a conversation with Enoch Liao.
Okay.
When he talked to me, I think it was just over a phone call, of how the Chinese Heritage Church is more diverse than almost all the multi-ethnic churches out there because of its linguistic, political, generational, gaps and the such. And I thought that's a brilliant thought. Is that in writing anywhere? And it's not, as far as I know. Or even if it is, it's hidden away somewhere in an academic journal.
Sure.
And I used to tell people you should put that in writing so that others will read it and free them up in some ways.
You told Enoch he should do it.
Yeah. Or someone like Owen, who talked about how he used to feel as if ministering in an Asian American context is JV and multi-ethnic is varsity. He wrote an article about that in SOLA, and he would talk about it. But it's when people put their writings in a book that that it remains a little bit more permanent. It gets quoted, and it almost gives people permission. If looking at the immigrant church, the Chinese Heritage Immigrant Church is multi-ethnic, and it's written in a chapter in a book by this person, I don't know who Enoch Liao is, then there must be something to it. And I felt like those things should be put in writing. And so, I've been thinking about it, yes.
Well, I'm very happy that we were able to talk about it, and now we have a book ready to go. I want to hear kind of behind the scenes. How was it to, gather everybody together, get them to actually do the writing? I want to know how you came about making this book.
I think it helped that I am friends with almost all the authors. whether it be working with them in the SOLA Council or just outside, just in my friendship, or the editors, knowing them through SOLA. And because I've known them, I've interacted with them, many of them have spoken at this church, I've known some of the things that they're really good at, some of the thoughts, some of the things that they've processed. And so when I proposed the book idea to the SOLA Council, they were all agreeable to it. But I'll be honest with you, I did not think all of them would write.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I thought that people would be too busy, they would be hesitant, they wouldn't be sure what they could contribute. Mm-hmm. What I was pleasantly surprised by is that all of them said yes, they'd be willing.
Yeah.
And they ultimately met the deadline, which was, I only gave them like 2 months to write.
Yeah. Part of that was me too. Part of that was me saying, hey, we need to get on this right now.
Right. And we, I brainstormed a lot of ideas, and we had dialogue. I dialogued with each individual author as to what I thought they were good at, what was on their heart and such. And it was amazing. What came out was better than I thought, to be honest with you.
I agree.
Yeah.
Shows what we think about.
And people wrote from their own personalities. People wrote from what they're passionate about. There are a few of the contributors, they're already published people. They have their own books and such. So, they're very smooth. Others, this is the first thing that they'll ever, and possibly even the last thing they'll ever publish. But I think they're all great thinkers and practitioners, and I'm so grateful that we have them in writing.
Yeah. It's a broad scope of people involved here. You're making phone calls, you're emailing.
Yeah.
I want to know, what did you learn from that entire process of wrangling people together?
I think that all these leaders, God has used them, God has worked in and through them, God has blessed others through their ministries, and for different reasons, they underappreciate, undersell the way that God has used them and the voice that God has given to them. And then I think one of the things that I've learned just personally is that someone else has to come along and give them permission and encouragement to say, hey, what you say matters. Your voice is important, and not just in a charitable way, but to say that your voice, your thoughts, your conclusions, the way that you have concluded how you're going to approach that is helpful for others.
Yeah.
And I think almost every person needed someone else to come along and say, we need that in writing. We need for that to be passed down to others. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned. And I am now, as I meet other leaders, I'm looking at them and thinking, what did they have to contribute that they may not, unless someone else comes along and encourages them to do so. Yeah. And I think, by the way, it's not for their sake, but as you and I know, that the needs of the emerging generation of Asian Americans is huge.
Absolutely.
And because we don't have mentors who are necessarily speaking into that context on a regular basis, on an authoritative basis, we need the elders of this generation to speak.
Yeah.
And so, it's not so that they can express their thoughts, but rather the generation that's coming, we need to hear those thoughts.
Yeah, it's very, in one sense, it's forward thinking of you, right? Because you're saying, hey, we need to put this in writing for the future generations to read, right? But also, in a sense, you're preserving what happened in the past and taking all of these people, all of their histories, their backgrounds, their accumulated knowledge, right? And you're saying, hey, let's look at that and put it together in here. Am I correct in saying that?
And I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Of what you're talking about. When we talk about church models, we talk about townhouse model and things like that. A house within a house type of room to rent type of models, and we got that from Hoover Wang.
Okay.
One of the pioneer Chinese American pastors, scholar in the past. But his thoughts have been put on paper, passed down. Now Benson teaches that in his class, etc. And so that has informed us and framed how we do a lot of ministries.
Right.
And so that which was done decades ago. And I believe some of the voices in this book will not only preserve what's been done, but will inform those going forward. And so, not only past but forward. Yes, I agree completely.
After having kind of the finished product in your hands, what is your hope for this book? And then maybe even outside of this book, I guess. What's your hope for the book? What do you want to see the book do? And then how do you want to see the book impact people or the church? Yeah.
For me, as a Korean American pastor, I remember 20, 30 years ago trying to figure out what the next generation, the 1.5 second generation Korean Americans are supposed to do, how we're supposed to act, how we're supposed to do church. And because there were no mentors above us, I read books by others and by non-Koreans. And so like Pursuing the Pearl by Ken Fong, or later on Growing Healthy Asian American Churches by Peter Cha, who edited that work, and other works. There weren't that many, but that helped disciple me and how I need to think. And when sometimes it wasn't in writing, I sought those people out, like Corey Shida, and try to figure out how they approach church and ministry, how they intuitively contextualize. And I'm hoping and thinking, and I fully expect that younger leaders and current existing leaders also will be mentored or will be helped by this book. They can't, we're not all going to be able to sit with a lot of these leaders like a Hanley Liu, but now that they've read Hanley Liu, and Hanley talks about how we need to find our own voices. And he references like a Daniel Wang and a Matthew Kim and others. And I think that will encourage a lot of the Asian American preachers. And I can contextualize. I can look into my culture, my family, in what matters to me. And I don't have to hide it all the time. I can bring it out because that's what our people are going through also. So we're hoping that this will be a blessing to help them, to help church leaders to better disciple their people in the gospel, but in a contextualized manner.
I want to go off script for a second. Was there any hesitation in terms of the whole project, maybe starting it, maybe releasing the book, maybe even putting your words down on paper? Did you feel any hesitation? Were you scared at all? Because right now I feel like we're projecting a sense of like, this is a great project, which I do believe in too. But I want to know, like, were there any doubts that you went through? It's very. I said to myself, we're making a statement here. It's a bold statement, right? How did you feel?
Well, that's a great question because to say something about the Asian American church, because that in itself is a little bit controversial. Because there will be a lot of people who will say, well, if you're all speaking English and you're in America, why are you qualifying it racially or culturally in that way? Why can't you just be a church that maybe happens to have a lot of Asian Americans per se? And when you do that, are you not excluding others or setting yourself apart. And so
Sure.
I think there may have been more of a hesitation if it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
But I think what's happened is that after the George Floyd, after the Atlanta spa shooting, there has been almost an awakening among the culturally diverse Asian American collective that instead of being ashamed of our heritage, our culture, our race, our background, we need to acknowledge it at least. It's not the only thing that's important to us, but it's still a big part of who we are.
Yeah.
And when we are discipling people, when we are ministering to people, we need to take that into consideration.
Yeah.
And so I think because this project happened in 2023, 2024, that collective mindset is a little bit more fresh. There's been, so there's been like kind of like a mark in time. Perhaps it was the Atlanta spa shooting and the API hate and the pandemic and all that. There's been more of an awareness that of our Asian Americanness, and that we need to acknowledge it and we need to address it. Now, we're not all going to come up with the same conclusion. We're not all going to say we need to go to an Asian American church or we need to identify ourselves in that way as a church,
Sure.
But at least address some of that. And so I think if it was in the past, I might have been more hesitant. And I think it would have been also the same for some of our authors. They might have been more hesitant to write about it. And I think like Aaron Chang, when he writes about the theology of the exilic community, he talks about how in the past, he would try so hard to be culturally neutral, but something flipped. And now he addresses it more. Yeah, if there was a hesitancy, it'll be more like, hey, can we get the right people to, edit it? Can we get people to turn in their chapters on time?
Yeah.
Things of that nature.
Yeah.
But it's more logistics.
Yeah.
But the more I did it, and when I started getting the chapters, when I got the first chapter in early by Aaron Chang, I'm going, this is why we're doing this. As I read that, I go, this is why. Did you feel that too?
As the chapters came in, yes, I was like, okay, I think that we actually have something to say here. I think that this is actually good that we're gonna say it. Yes, yeah, and yeah. To be fair, I was a little bit like when just talking about the project. I was anxious. I was anxious throughout the whole thing. I'm still a little bit anxious right now, because it's not yet out in the world. But just having these proofs in hand, I feel a lot better. I feel confident that, God was placing us down this path to do it. I think, that might be a good place to end, Pastor Steve. How do you feel now knowing that it's going to be out there? I mean, we already have the proof here. We already have plans to get it out there in the world. How do you feel knowing that, this, maybe the heart, the actual work is done. Of course, we need to get it out now. But how do you feel having accomplished this, really?
Well, some may say that the goal of a book is to sell as many copies, to get in the hands of as many possible. And if God does that, that's fine. That's great. But let's say, we give it out at the conference and then, et cetera, and it just fizzles.
Sure. Okay.
That people, it just doesn't really take off.
Yeah.
People
that could happen.
Yeah. People don't quote it. I said, well, that was a nice little, thing that you guys did, that type of a thing. And the way that I see it is this something that God wanted us to do? And I think yes.
I agree.
And we're responsible to be good and faithful. And that's all.
Yeah.
And I believe that each of the contributors, led by the Holy Spirit, wrote and everyone in the process did their what they were supposed to do. And if God chooses to multiply that, that's fine. But if not, that's fine too. We are faithful to it.
Yeah.
And all of us who wrote, we had to process the information, our thoughts, our hearts, our souls. And so it helped us to grow. And so if that's all that happens, it was like a sanctification process for these leaders, I say that's good enough.
Yeah.
So, yep.
That's awesome. Pastor Steve, I'm very proud of the book, and I'm happy to have worked together with you on it. Thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for taking the time to do this interview.
All right. Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks.
All right.
SOLA Network exists to influence the emerging generation of Asian Americans and those who lead them with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Find our articles, book reviews, podcasts, and more at sola.network. If you would like to partner with SOLA Network through collaboration, networking, volunteering, or giving, please contact us through the website.